7 ways STEM leaders make it safe to speak up at work. Do you want those you work with to be more proactive about speaking up with their ideas? Do you want to help shift your work culture towards an environment where more people speak up? My name is Stephanie Slocum. I'm the author of She Engineers and founder of Engineers Rising LLC. Speaking up is important. In fact, when I recently completed case study interviews of more than 100 women STEM leaders and allies, I found that speaking up was the top personal attribute the leaders themselves self-identified as contributing to their success. This video is about the 7 practical ways leaders can make it safe to speak up. But if you want to learn more about the other things we found in the case study interviews, you can get the entire report via the QR code you see up on the screen and the link in the description accompanying this video. Why can speaking up sometimes be challenging? I'm sure you can imagine a time where you wanted to speak up, but you didn't. Or maybe another time when you wished a coworker had spoken up after the fact. Every time we think about speaking up, our brains subconsciously analyze if it is worth the potential risk to do so. We make a snap judgment about if it is safe for us to speak up, if we will be judged or ridiculed for doing so, or if we may potentially enhance or damage a relationship. This is often a split-second decision that we are not consciously aware of that we are making. This is why it's harder to speak up in a big group meeting, and why it's easier to speak up when we're talking to someone that we trust. The level to which people feel safe to take that interpersonal risk of speaking up is related to a concept called psychological safety. Psychological safety is something that Google found in their research as the #1 indicator of a high-performing team. In other words, silence is nearly always a safer choice than speaking up and will be the default reaction when people don't feel safe. This isn't an individual failing so much as a cultural challenge. Consider, what has been normalized in your work culture? Are people more likely to speak up than stay silent? When there is a psychologically safe culture, creative problem solving and innovation can occur because the foundations of trust have been built. Leaders and managers have the opportunity to set the tone. Let's talk about 7 ways you can do that, ways you can encourage your team and people you work with to speak up. First, get to know your team. When you understand what drives your team to do their best work and you know what your team's strengths and weaknesses are, you can put them in roles where they can succeed, and you can build a trust level with them where they will feel comfortable speaking up. The second way you can make it safe for others to speak up is through listening. You know what it feels like when someone is truly paying attention and listening to you versus what it feels like when someone is only partially listening to you, perhaps while they're checking their email or their phone. Think about how good it makes you feel when people are paying attention to what you're saying, and translate that into how you can better support your coworkers by the simple act of paying attention when they are speaking. When listening, if you pay attention and think curiously about what they are saying, make eye contact, turn your body towards them so that you are really hearing what they're saying, as well as staying present in the moment, and that you're listening not with the intent of what you're going to say next or with a plan to insert your opinion or suggestion. Of course, you want to share those when you are asked for them. But the key to active listening and the type of listening that leaders display is to pay attention without inserting your opinion or your suggestion unless you're asked for it. The third thing you can do to help others feel safe to speak up is to regularly ask for opinions. A simple sentence you can use is the one you see up on the screen. You can normalize asking others for their thoughts. Ask, what do you think about this? This is particularly important for anyone who is in a power dynamic, anyone that has power over someone else. Asking the people you manage, what do you think about this? goes a long way towards making everyone feel like they are a valuable contributor to the team, which increases the likelihood that they will speak up when it is necessary. The fourth way is to model vulnerability. Now, often when I tell people this, they ask, well, what's the difference between vulnerability and oversharing? So I'm not talking about oversharing in that you're telling someone your entire life story. However, even as a leader or a manager, when it is appropriate to share the fact that you may not be an expert in a particular area that one of your team members is, or you don't know the solution and you're struggling through it with them, that vulnerability creates a safe bubble where your team members realize that, okay, my manager isn't infallible. They're not a know-it-all. They're not going to judge me when I ask for help or don't know the answer. And as a result, this creates a safe container for others on your team to speak up. The fifth way to encourage people to speak up is to reward courage. And you do that by publicly acknowledging and appreciating people who respectfully speak up. Actions speak much louder than words when it comes to speaking up, and needs to be a focus point when it comes to creating the psychological safety necessary for an individual to decide if it is safe to say what they're thinking. Power dynamics matter a lot here, and the more leaders and managers set the expectation that it is okay and even encouraged to respectfully disagree with them or question them, the more that safety is created. A manager's and leader's reaction to divergent thinking and conflict tells those they work with a lot about how risky it might be to speak up. So for example, if someone shares a new idea and the reaction is routinely, well, that won't work, or this is the way we've always done it, that tells the person that shared the idea that courage is not rewarded and they may want to think twice about speaking up next time. If, on the other hand, when a new idea is shared, people ask thoughtful questions and consider that idea even if it's not ultimately implemented, the person sharing that idea thinks to themselves next time that it will be safe to share in the future. The sixth way you can make it safe for people to speak up is to ask for feedback. If you are a leader or a manager, you're often expected to give feedback. But ask yourself, how often are you asking and receiving feedback from those you are managing? Feedback is required from those you're managing as well as those above you to grow. And a simple question that you can use to gather feedback is this one. I want to be a better leader and I have a favor to ask. What's one thing I could be doing better, even if it's a very small thing? As a leader and manager myself, I have found that I have to be explicit in asking for feedback from those I am managing. Why? Because the power dynamics mean that those you are managing often feel like they can't give you unsolicited feedback because it may damage the relationship or there may be some sort of backlash. And so I make it a part of my one-on-ones to routinely ask, hey, what is something that I could be doing better to better support your work and what you're doing, even if it's this very small thing? Now, if you are someone who is trying to solicit feedback from someone above you, your boss, your manager, I have 2 blogs and videos I have written on how to go about doing that in a way that will preserve that relationship. I will drop those links in the description with this video and you can check them out there. The 7th way to make it safe for others to speak up is to be aware of your body language and tone of voice. We've all been in a situation at work where someone said something was okay and we knew instantly by their body language and tone of voice that it was not okay. And so being aware when you're communicating with others of, number one, is what you're saying and is your body language and tone of voice aligned? When they are aligned, that sends the message to the receiver that you can be trusted. When they are not aligned, an unconscious thing happens in the receiver's brain that says, wait a minute, these aren't aligned, and so I can't really trust what this person is saying. This is particularly important when you're doing things like soliciting feedback or brainstorming, because if you're saying something and the receiver feels like, well, I can't really trust what this person is saying, their body language and tone says that they don't really care what I think, they're not offering this feedback to help me, they're just offering it so they can kind of get it off their chest, then that does not create a space where the person who is receiving it feels safe to speak up or ask questions. So, to summarize, the 7 ways that you can make it safe for others to speak up are: first, get to know your team. Second, listen. Third, regularly ask for opinions. Fourth, model vulnerability. Fifth, reward courage. And remember, actions in terms of how you are responding to conflict or divergent thinking speak much louder than words. Ask for feedback. And finally, be aware of your body language and tone of voice and make sure they align with what you are communicating. I'd love to know in the comments which of these are most important to you and what other things do you do to encourage those around you to speak up at work.